Hi there, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Julie Riley, and the name of my company is Chefs of the Future, a cooking school that comes to you. I'd like to thank the Baldwin Library for sponsoring this video today. We're going to be making homemade apple crisp with a mulled cider as a little bonus recipe. So the things that, all right, so you need 4 apples, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, cinnamon, salt, 2 sticks of butter plus 2 tablespoons, a cup and a half of flour, 3/4 of a cup of oats, and 3/4 of a cup of sugar, more cinnamon, and the 2 sticks of butter. Okay, the Baldwin Library, you received a kit with the recipe, and in your bag you have 4 apples. And we have the spices for the mulled cider. This package, it says Crumb Topping. That's the ingredients for the crumbs. And then this package, the apple filling, is what's going to go into the apple filling. So, let me just say this. And you also have your pan that I gave you. Now, I bought the pan, and then I bought the apples. I bought a case of apples, so the apples were a lot larger than I thought they were going to be. So you can use a bigger pan than this, or a casserole dish if you have. I think I'm going to be using my Pyrex casserole dish. You could use a square cake pan, anything like that. You'll also need a couple of large bowls that are microwave safe. And that's about it. So let's get to, let me show you the other tools. I have a pastry blender. If you don't have a pastry blender, you could use 2 butter knives. I have a wedger to cut my apples. If you don't have it, then just a paring knife, or if you're an experienced chef, a chef knife. Rubber spatula, and a apple peeler. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to get our filling ready. Your butter should be room temperature. It's the best way to work with that for this project. All right, so I'm going to start by peeling the apples, and this is a as you go kind of class. I am going to get I'm going to use my bag for my peelings of my apple. I'll just put it to the side here. That looks good. So this is my first program with the Baldwin Library. Happy to be here. When you peel, you take the peeler. Be careful, children, if you're using it. This is sharp. Take the peeler, and I rotate the apple. I keep the peeler in one spot, and I go around and around. Don't worry if you miss a couple of spots. That's okay. When we were kids, my grandmother taught us how to do it, where we would peel the whole entire apple in one strand. Me and my brother would have contests to see who could do it. My grandmother was a very patient woman. She taught me how to cook. So first I'm going to peel all of them. That's how I like to do it. I gave you, these are great apples. The red one is a Fuji. I love Fuji apples. They're crisp, they're sweet, and you want to have a nice firm apple when you're baking, because you want the chunks of the apple in the recipe. So apples like Macintosh and Empire, they kind of like melt when you cook them. Second type of apple I gave you was the Granny Smith. I like the Granny Smith for its tartness. It's a little tart. And then, like, using them, you could control, you know, the sweetness of it by adding your own sugar or not. So that's the other thing. Once we cut them up, we're going to taste a piece of each so that you know what they taste like. There, I did it. I think I did it. I did. Ha! All in one. And the last one. So my videos are a cook as you go video. It's not one where it's going to be edited and, you know, all of a sudden all the apples are chopped up and cut up. I like to do everything as we go. I did cut up a bowl of apples and have them prepared, but I'll see. I like to show you so that even sometimes if I come into something that maybe didn't go exactly how I thought it was going to go, I'll show you how to fix it. Cooking is so much fun, and there's all different ways to come to the same results. So I peeled my apples. I'm going to use my apple wedger first just to show you how that works. And press down. It's fabulous. I highly recommend having this tool in your kitchen arsenal. It's great, especially if you have kids. Cutting them apples, boom, done, you know. But I will show you how to cut them up. So after you use the apple wedger, just check it because maybe there's a seed or that funny part in the middle that still has to be cut out with the seeds. And then you're just gonna slice them into chunks. This is an apple crisp. Sometimes me and my grandmother, when we would make apple pies, we would slice the apples, and I'm just going to show you. We just slice them long way like this. And then when we went to put them in the pan, we would shingle them in the pan so that we would get the most amount of apples, and we would go layer by layer. But this one, we're tossing it all together, and we're gonna microwave it a little bit. That's why this bowl should be a microwave-safe bowl. The best type of bowl to use is a glass bowl, like a Pyrex bowl, or I don't really recommend, you know, Tupperware or plastic. It's not my favorite for the microwave. Lots of times what happens is it's the bowl that gets hot and really, you know, starts to cook your ingredients better. With plastic, I don't really like it. Okay, so here's your apple. I like to turn it upside down like this, and I slice down, cut it in half, and keep them flat on the cutting board. Cut it in half again, each side, and then in halves again. And then, you know, if you don't have the wedger, you have to take out the centerpiece. So I just make a V, cutting down like a V like that. I'll show you again. I cut a V. And this I cut across a little, and then I go down. So, if the kids are doing it, I recommend doing it on a cutting board. In a V like that. You could even turn the apple and cut it right on the cutting board. So you could cut straight and then make your V to get out that centerpiece. Now, I know I'm experienced, so I would just take it in my hand and cut it out. But it's very dangerous for children, so I don't recommend them doing it that way. The knife could slip and then they could cut their hands. So this is just an easy way. V to cut out the center. And some of them don't even have that much there. Okay. All right, and then slice. Children, when you're using knives, you always keep your eye on the blade and on your fingers. Never look away and don't get distracted if your friend or a family member is talking to you. You keep your eye on the product, the food. You curve your fingers like this to hold your food in place, and then slice down. Let the knife do the work. The knife is sharp, and it should be sharp. And you should be a little afraid of it too. But a sharp knife, a dull knife, is more dangerous than a sharp knife is. Because with a dull knife, you have to put pressure on it. And when you're putting that pressure, you don't have control. And if you slip, you're going to hurt yourself, cut yourself worse. A sharp knife, it cuts through. If you get cut with it, the cut is cleaner. So, not that I recommend getting cut or anything, but I just want to let you know, using a dull knife is more dangerous than using a sharp knife. Always pay attention, and always do it with an adult in the room watching you. So, again, just let the knife do all of the work. Another thing that children tend to do when they're working with knives is they tend to grab onto it really tight like this. That's not the way to hold a knife. You hold a knife very loosely in your hands. Again, by holding it tight, when you start to cut, you're going to have to put a lot of pressure into it. And you don't want to do that, because if your finger is in the way, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get cut. So, again, very loosely, curve the fingers. Watch what you're doing. And slice. Curve. And this is not grabbing the food. It's just, your hand is on top. It's just kind of holding it in place. If it is something that is so hard that you need to put more pressure on, maybe ask for some help. So this is looking good. These apples are so great. I highly recommend, well, we'll taste it in a second. Recommend tasting a piece of each. Let's see. So this is the Granny Smith. No, that was the Fuji. So sweet. Maybe taste the Granny Smith first, because it's a little tart. Very juicy. Ooh, very tart. Made my eyes squint. So, when you're cooking, I recommend also to cook with families and friends. That's how I learned. I was like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years old when my grandmother started teaching me how to cook. And it was just that she was preparing whatever the meals were going to be for the day, or the treats. And I would just be right by her side. She would first demonstrate everything. She didn't call it that, but in the beginning, she would do all the work, and she would show me what she was doing and explain it step by step, like, you know, how I'm explaining to you to cut this V out. And I would come home from school and we would make all sorts of things. So I'm Italian. She taught me how to make, the first things were pizza and meatballs and eggplant parmesan and homemade pasta. That was so much fun. Maybe I'll be able to do those classes with you at the Baldwin Library one day. And she was a great teacher. She really, really was. She is my inspiration for why I do what I do. I wouldn't be who I am today without my grandmother. And making the traditions, then cooking for the holidays was another story. Her and I would make all the homemade pasta for the family, and I had a big family. We have a family for the holidays would have at least 30 people back in the day. People coming and going all day. This is a lot of apples. So let me tell you this. If you don't have a bigger pan, then maybe take some apples out and you could stew them on the stove with a little bit of apple juice or apple cider and just make some homemade applesauce, which would be fun. Snowman spatula's out already. I'm going to give that a toss to mix the apples. All right. Then I'm going to open up this little pack that I gave you. Going to dump it in. That is the filling package that says filling on it. I'm going to give that a toss and make sure everything gets coated. And I'm going to put this in the microwave for 5-6 minutes. Actually, I'm going to add just a splash of apple cider to it. The apples are going to release their own juices. You see, we have cornstarch in here too, which is going to kind of hold it all together. So there we go. I'm going to put it in for 5. And then we're going to move on to our topping. So here is where the recipe is a little bit different from what I gave you. If you have an extra 3/4 to a cup of flour, I would get that. I put baking soda in yours. It didn't have enough flour in it. It won't be bad. It'll just have a little extra flavor of baking soda. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you too. And it's okay, even though it's in there. I like to put 2 tablespoons of butter in my apple mixture. You don't have to. It just gives it a little better flavor. And it is something I would just put on top. I wouldn't mix it in. Okay. So I'm going to add the extra flour into the mixture. That bag that I gave you had a cup of flour, 3/4 of a cup of sugar, 3/4 of a cup of oats. It had a teaspoon of baking soda, a tablespoon of cinnamon, and a pinch of salt. Okay. So I'm going to mix that up so that it's all one color. See the cinnamon in there. Fabulous. And then I'm going to start with a 1.5 sticks of room temperature butter and have the other half ready in case we need more. So I'm going to slice this. If it's not room temperature, you would just cut it a little smaller. Maybe into quarters. Excellent. And just dip it in. I also like to have a little wet towel by my side when my hands get a little messy. All right, that's a stick and a half. I'm going to keep this other piece to the side. I am going to give it a little toss to coat the butter. I'm kind of chopping up the butter in there. If you have a pastry blender, this is called cutting the butter into the flour. You just press down, make sure you go to the bottom of the bowl. If you don't have a pastry blender, there's 3 different ways to do this. If you don't have a pastry blender, you can use 2 knives, butter knives, and you just aim for the butter and keep cutting the butter into tiny little pieces. Toss it around every once in a while. And that's the second way. And for this, because it doesn't have to be flaky, if you were making a pie crust, I would not recommend using your hands. But use one hand. Don't get both hands dirty. This is very, very messy. So that's up to the parents if they're going to let their kids do it. You could just squeeze it. And I'm going like this. And then if there's a big piece of butter, I'm flaking it off like that. So break apart the butter. You want to incorporate all the flour in. And I think with the extra flour, you are going to need the extra butter. So I just wanted to start it. See how it's starting to form crumbs? That's what you want. And I push it with my fingers. I push it forward. That's why I use a big bowl for this too. Yes, it is going to need more butter in it. So I'm just going to put that in. There goes my apples where buzzer just went off. Make sure you just keep breaking up the butter and squeezing it in one hand and over the bowl. It shouldn't be dry at all when you're done. So now I'm really squeezing it and then breaking it apart. Take some of the flour that's not incorporated in. There we go. See what it's looking like now? It looks like crumb topping. So it made a ball. Nice, and I am going to break it apart though. We'll do more of that when we... Oh my goodness, I forgot to tell you to put the oven on. Put the oven on 350. Let's check those apples. I'm gonna rinse my hands off. Ooh, very good. You know what? I made crumbs yesterday too. Where are they? I think I'm gonna mix them together. So, here are these apples. I am going to give them a little bit of a stir. And you can see there's some liquid there. So I'm going to coat everything. And I'm going to pour some into my pan. Let's just see. I don't know, maybe it will fit in one pan. Maybe mound it up really high. See how that works? All right, and then yeah. Kind of pack them in. You want them like right next to each other because when they bake, they're gonna melt some more. So do you see how I did this? I kind of left a little space over here because now I'm gonna put the topping on it. I want to cover the whole thing. Let's get rid of this. That's nice. If you have any questions, you can email me at julie@chefsofthefuture.com. Juliechefsofthefuture. Actually, all the information is on your information is on your sheets that I gave you. Please follow me and subscribe to my YouTube and my Instagram. Wow, that is some pie that we're making here. It's actually not a pie, it's an apple crisp. And, you know, that was a lot of crumbs that we made, so if you have a lot left over. Now, you don't want this packed down. I'm not packing it. I'm just kind of making sure that it's all on there. You want it nice and crumbly so that when we cut into it, crumbles. Now, I highly recommend when you bake any kind of pie to do it on a baking sheet with a piece of foil or a piece of parchment, because it's going to help with your cleanup time. Because if the pie spills over, especially apple pies, they're going to get all bubbly inside. All right. So, let's put that in. All right. I am going to make a second one. That I had my apples from yesterday. So the thing with the apple crisp, you don't use a pie cutter to cut it. You just scoop it out with a spoon. It's a fabulous thing. See how this, just crumbling it on top. You want some big pieces. You don't want them all fine. So usually I just squeeze it in my hand and then I kind of break it apart gently when I go to put it on top. And crumb topping is also known as streusel topping. So, that is that. A little bit more about me. I've been teaching cooking for 25 years. My mission statement is to empower children through food preparation, reinforcing math, art, science, cultural awareness, bringing families to the table, showing them the ease of preparing a home-cooked meal. Doesn't have to be processed, and it can be fast. And finally, the power of sitting down to a home-cooked meal reaches far beyond the food that's on the table. So cook together, eat together, make new traditions. The kitchen is a great place. So let me put this second one in. And they have to bake at 375. They're gonna take at least 45 minutes to an hour. I will come back when they're done. Okay, so if you had leftover crumb topping, you could save it. You can put it in the refrigerator. So I'm just gonna take mine and put it in a little plain container. And that's edible just the way that it is. It doesn't have to be cooked or anything. You know, it just because it just has butter and the flour and the oats. All right, let's clean up our area, and we're going to take our crisp out of the oven. It should be ready by now. Look at that. This one's all bubbly. Delicious. To move on, and just very quickly, we are going to make the mulled cider. We're going to take a cup of, you know, whatever size you like, that you'd like to drink from. You could make it for as many people as you like. I'm going to measure out one portion. It's just me here. Put my cup to the side. Okay, let's see. All right, next thing I'm going to add to it is some bit of orange zest. Orange zest is the most flavorful part of the orange, the zest. That's fabulous. And when you do it, you just want the orange. Once you get down to the yellow part, you just move to another section. 10. And I use, for zest, I use that one. Okay. Alrighty. And then I gave you this beautiful packet of spices, and I'm going to show you what they are. Actually, I gave you... So there was a cinnamon stick. There was a star anise and juniper berries. Other spices that you could add, or whole allspice and cloves, whole cloves. Now we don't ingest those things. We just cook it in our cider, and then we take them out, we strain them out. So I'm just gonna put this on. This is my induction burner. Induction burners are electromagnetic. And I'm just going to put that on high for a little bit until it comes up to a boil, and then I'll simmer it. I'm going to get my orange ready. I'm going to cut a nice big slice of orange. Cut it in half. It's going to be my garnish on my cup. Fabulous. I can actually even put a little orange, squeeze some orange juice in there too. It's nice. And then I'm going to show you how I like to serve my apple crisp. So as I said before, you don't need a knife to cut this. You just scoop it out with a spoon. Got myself a nice bowl. And I'm just going to scoop it out. Yes, I like to put it in a bowl. Like that. And then what? What is good on top of apple crisp is a little bit of ice cream. So my electromagnetic induction burner, it's almost boiling already. So I'm going to take a scoop of ice cream, put that right on top there. Yum. This in the back. And then I'm going to, yep, there it is, it's boiling. And you could let that sit, like simmer for a little bit to get more of the flavors from the spices. I'm just gonna pour it through a strainer. Most of the time I don't, but I would like you to pour yours through a strainer so that you don't choke on the spices. You don't want to ingest the spices. And my orange wedge, and there it is. Hot apple crisp, mulled cider, and topped with ice cream. Fantastic. Thank you for joining me. From my kitchen to yours with love and creativity. Happy cooking and have a great day. Thank you.